Before man talked about genetics, Gerald Massey talked about the origin and foundation of Asia. Now, we don't talk much about breeding, but we can see by the look of people all over the world that breeding, just as they did on the plantation, has taken place everywhere on this earth. We've tried EuroAsian, now they're talking about Blasian. But what they're really talking about is not breeding when it comes down to Blasian, because they're actually coming back home. See, DNA recognizes DNA. It doesn't recognize, recessive DNA. It recognizes dominant DNA. They talked about Asian women connecting with black men. No, they're just coming home. You see, every branch derives from a root. You do not insult the branch by naming the root. You insult the root by pretending the branch grew alone. When AI traces early Asian civilizations alongside genetic ancestry, it finds continuity, not rupture. The people who entered Asia were already human, symbolic, and organized. They carried cosmetology, navigation, metallurgy, ritual, and social structure with them. Asia did not civilize Africans. Africans helped civilize Asia. That help was absorbed and localized and re-expressed, but not erased. It was simply relabeled. I've talked to you once before about civilizations being built on top of civilizations, foundations built on foundations. But some foundations were recessive, not dominant. Discomfort arises because we talk about modern racial categories built in the last few centuries, not tens of thousands of years ago. DNA does not recognize them. It recognizes descent, and descent leads back to Africa. Who you are descended from leads back to Africa. When the thumbnail says, AI says, Asians are African, it compresses a long, complex truth into a single sentence. A sentence people were never trained to hear. Compression does not equal distortion, it equals clarity. By the end of this analysis, the question is no longer whether Asians descend from Africans. That's settled. The question is why the world was taught to separate African or Africa from its descendants. Why Africa was framed as static while its children were framed as dynamic. And why Africa was allowed to give birth to humanity but not to history. Or so they said. AI does not inherit the training. It reads the genome, maps, migration, aligns with history, with evidence, and reports what it finds. Africa first, movement outward, transformation over time. Asia is not an exception. Asia is proof that Africans did not stay put, proof that Africans adapted, proof that Africans became many people, including Asians. Higgins saw this without DNA. Gerald Massey saw this without genetics. Modern science now confirms it with precision. Africa did not borrow humanity. Humanity borrowed Africa. When Asia or its descendants, who are from Africans, this is not a rewriting of history. It is a removing of the edits. DNA does not argue, apologize, or forget, and neither should we. We should remember. DNA remembers its home. History did not begin when Europe started writing it down, nor when Asia began naming dynasties. History began when humans began remembering. Africa was not only the birthplace of bodies, it was the birthplace of memory, movement, and meaning. Before there were borders, Africans walked. Before there were races, Africans adapted. Before there were civilizations, Africans carried their seeds. Everywhere those seeds landed, something grew. Asia did not rise in isolation. It rose through inheritance. The people who entered Asia were not empty vessels waiting to be filled by land. They arrived already human, already thinking, already capable of building worlds. What later became Asian civilization did not appear from nothing. It unfolded from something older. Africa. Abakulan. Time passed. Features changed. Languages shifted. Names replaced names, but ancestry remained. Yet, somewhere along the way, a quiet rule was imposed. And this is a word for word, more or less. You see, Africa could be acknowledged as the womb of humanity, but not the author of history. That was a no-no. Africa could give birth, but not direction. Africa could be the origin, but never the authority. Its children were allowed to grow, but not to remember where they came from. That's why you don't know where you came from. Africa was allowed to mother the world, but not to teach it. That is the imbalance this video exposes. Not to provoke or accuse, but to restore. See, when AI traces DNA, it does not flatter. It maps migration, and it doesn't apologize for it. It aligns with history, with evidence, and it does not negotiate. It simply reveals. And what it reveals is this: Africa is not behind the world. Africa is beneath it as its foundation, and Asia is diminished or not diminished by this truth. It is deepened. Europe is not threatened by this truth. It is contextualized. Humanity is not divided by this truth. It is united. Acknowledging origin does not erase identity. It explains it. Africa was never absent from history. It was edited out, and edits can be reversed. DNA remembers. So when your women come back home to Africans, don't you say nothing. History finally exhales. See, most people, they get mad because now all of a sudden we didn't snatch the sheet off of long time. History has been told in a way that hides important truths. All humans share common origin in Africa.